When you ignore all the bad things NBA players have done, like beating their baby mamas, beating a kid, to getting posterized, and also, that ain't the only poster Giddy's on. He's also on a Warner poster. But if you ignore all that, they've done some pretty incredible things. Things like dunking from the free throw line, making free throws while being blind, shout out Helen Keller, to being so good that people from North Korea were fans. Get this man Rodman in the Pentagon ASAP. Yet, despite all that, there's something that's even better than all those things. And that's winning the Michael Jordan Trophy, aka the MVP. Why the heck did they name it after him? I have no idea. It should have been named after Kareem, who has 6 of them. But instead, they gave Kareem the Social Justice Award, aka the goddamn Rosa Parks Trophy. Either way, in honor of the MVPs, we're going to be talking about the last 20 players who won, what the heck they're up to now, and the best MVP seasons. Which, for me, that's Westbrook's MVP year. Yeah, that's my best one. You can have your own guy like Bron, Curry, Kobe, whoever, but if you don't have Westy in your top 4, or at least top 5, you're tripping. You don't know ball. Not having Westy at least top 5 is disrespectful. Did he have the most points? No. The most assists? No. The best stats? No. But it was everything else that he did. The revenge aspect. The whole, oh KD, you just left me? After all we've been through? I bet. Then giving us one of the greatest get-backs in history. Up there with John Wick circling the block for his dog. Or even when America got revenge for the Twin Towers and gave Osama a ticket to Tupac's concert. I'm telling you, up there with those. Alright, here we go, boys. First up is Steve Nash, who won in 2005. And he didn't just win. He won in back-to-back years. And this should be celebrated, admired, and praised. But instead, Shaq absolutely hated him for it. In fact, till this day, 20 years later, Shaq still trashes him for it. Before joining Phoenix, the Suns had the 24th overall record. 1 year later, Nash carried them to the best overall record, a whopping 33-win turnaround. He was putting up 19 points and 10 assists a game on 50, 40, 90 shooting splits. Was the only player to average double-digit assists. But even more impressive was that he was helping teammates become all-stars, have career years, and feed their families. No, like genuinely. When you joined Nash's team in the 2000s, you ran to your wife to celebrate. You jumped with joy because you knew you made it. You knew you were about to get paid. Nash was out there giving families generational wealth, and Shaq still trashed him. He claimed Nash's MVP was stolen, saying, quote, Nash would just run around like a gnat passing the ball while he was putting up 28 and 15, yet the MVP still went to him. Shaq also told the media, quote, it was a sympathy trophy, and he didn't stop. No. He continued the hate tour for over 20 years until the two finally met face to face, and this happened.
Can you show me one of those MVP trophies that you stole from me?
You can't make a free throw down the stretch. You know, it's hard to get an MVP, buddy.
The crazy thing is, Shaq was complaining about Nash winning 2 years in a row when he almost won it 3 years in a row. In fact, he deserved it more his third year than he did the first 2 years. He had the best stretch of his life. He was balling like his mama needed a house, but ended up finishing second. To who, you might ask? Dirk Nowitzki, who won over 20 years ago, back when I was a wee little lad, had a squeaker voice, couldn't stay up past my bedtime. My giggle stick size still hasn't changed though. This man was out there getting buckets and winning MVP while looking like a High School Musical extra. Cold. Even though he was worth over $300 million, he still pull up pregame with leftovers wrapped in tinfoil. Yet you're over here flexing Balenci off a McDonald's salary? Humble yourself. But Dirk was really one of the ones though, man. One of the first international stars. Like, imagine how many Europeans got introduced to basketball because of him. He had the entire country of Germany rocking his jersey. That is the literal definition of aura. There's maybe only a few players who've had foreign countries rocking their jersey. Maybe Lynn Jordan, Paulie Jokic now, but not many. It's a very, very small number of guys. And there's an even smaller number of players who've had the literal Taliban rocking their jersey. In fact, there's only one. Kobe. This This is just another level of star power. Whatever is better than aura, it's this. Like, you can say you have 11 rings, have more MVPs, maybe even that you have the scoring record. But the one thing you can't say is that you had ISIS rocking your jersey. There's still probably an army out there that yells Kobe after shooting rockets at each other. In 2008, Kobe won his first MVP after putting up 28 points a game with only 5 assists. For reference, that was 6 assists lower than Steve Nash. And this made people call him out, demanding that he pass more. But who the heck was he supposed to pass to? Kwame Brown? In fact, there was one time where he tore his rotator cuff, which meant he couldn't use his right hand at all. So, of course, you'd think he'd sit out. Nah, he still ended up playing. And on top of that, he still didn't pass the rock to anyone. In his mind, even with only one hand, he's still better than everyone else. After Kobe, the MVP went to LeBron, who's about to go on a run that made him the most scariest and overpowering athletes ever. LeBron's known for doing the impossible, and the best example of this might be when he won MVP with 2 different teams. This doesn't happen. There's too much hard work required, longevity, and the thousands of other things needed. In fact, the odds are so low. Only 3 players in NBA history have done it, a mere 0.006% of players. But then, LeBron did something even more impossible when he won 4 MVPs in 5 years. That's only happened once before. It's one of the greatest achievements ever. However, people around the basketball world started hating him. Overnight, he became the most scrutinized and tormented athlete in history. When LeBron got drafted to Cleveland, the city erupted with joy. They hung banners of him, dressed up with him, even pushed their hairlines back like him. He was their savior, the face of the city. And you want to talk about answering the bell? Bron came out and delivered. He became only the 4th player ever to lead his team in points, assists, rebounds, blocks, and steals. He also had 500 more points than the runner-up MVP in Kobe. But the most impressive part was with him on the floor, the Cavs were the number 1 ranked offense. With him off, they became the 2nd worst offense. His defensive numbers were also dominant. With him on, they had the number 1 D. With him off, they had the 18th ranked defense. This man was so important to his team that in the 14 games he missed, the Cavs only won 1 game. 1! LeBron was the team! You could have had him run away most poles and flight, and he still would have gotten the job done. But as dominant as he was, there was one blemish on his resume. The playoffs. Because despite winning Rookie of the Year, back-to-back MVPs, and everything else, in the playoffs, he couldn't get the job done. He needed some help, and the Cavs weren't giving him any. Despite trying everything in his power, he couldn't get over the hump. And this was about to become one of the biggest storylines of the season. Because funny enough, that year also happened to be the year that LeBron was becoming a free agent, which meant he could easily switch teams. And because of this, there was only one question on everyone's mind. What would LeBron do? Would the hometown kid actually turn his back on the city? The city that gave him everything, showered him with love, stuck by his side, hung banners of him. Would he actually leave? The answer was yes. LeBron took his talents to Miami, setting in motion one of the most hated eras in NBA history. Everyone collectively lost their minds. Fans burned jerseys. They took the banner down. Even the owner tore LeBron apart mercilessly. It's the worst thing that had happened to him. And remember, they're Browns fans. They call him LeBum, traitor, the word only black people can use. There was even a report that said when LeBron tried to talk to his former teammates, they all ignored him. What was unfolding was pure hatred. And it was about to get way worse. Things were only getting started. In the meantime, Derrick Rose was out there going on his own tear. We were witnessing the birth of a superstar. And this one's a little extra special for me. There's a special place in my heart for Rose. And that's because this man is responsible for some of my greatest memories. I will never forget putting up 70 points with Rose against my mentally handicapped uncle on 2K12. Bro was a straight cheat code. Man, were those the good old days. And for this, I thank you, sir. That year, despite key players missing time, he still led the Bulls to the best record in the East. He also was the only player top 10 in points and assists, until finally, at just 22 years old, Rose became the youngest MVP in history. While y'all landed at Tilted Towers, he was putting in the work in hours. It's honestly a shame to think of what could have been, man. He'll easily go down as one of the biggest what-ifs in history. Like, just imagine if God would have given him Megan Thee Stallion's knees. Ooh, boy, definitely a champion, hands down. But, unfortunately, he had to deal with that problem, as well as the other one, LeBron James, who was still dealing with the backlash. In fact, there was one night in particular where it would reach peak levels, a night that neither LeBron nor Cleveland would ever forget. His first game back. Things were thrown on the court. Fans erupted in boos, and it got so hostile that the security almost ended the game before the final buzzer. In fact, it got so bad that LeBron had to do his post-game interview inside the locker room for his safety. The hate that he was experiencing during this era was unlike anything in sports history. He constantly got abused and verbally assaulted by fans. No matter what he did, good or bad, the target on his back only got bigger. But as bad as it all was, it was nothing compared to the firestorm he was about to face. An event that would be the lowest and darkest of his career. LeBron had left the Cavs to join the Heat because he thought it gave him a better chance to win a title. And this was about to be put to the test, because in the summer of 2011, he made the finals again, this time with the Heat, yet still lost. And as a result, everything boiled over. He was ripped apart in the media, especially by Skip Bayless, who went on a generational hate run. I'm talking about this is the type of hating you earn a master's degree for. He tore him apart and used the loss as proof to tarnish his legacy. Everyone else mocked him too. Even his family became targets. It got to the point where they had to have 24-hour security supervision. And with all the pressure, hate, and hostility raining down on him, LeBron still destroyed the league as usual. He led the league in points, rebounds, assists, and steals. That year, they also created a stat for this man, CBD, aka chase down blocks, which, of course, he also led the league in, with 32. You see, this is the stuff ESPN never talks about, though. You'll never hear him talking good about him. Instead, they're too busy doing tricks on it. Come on, ESPN, do better. LeBron ended the season by taking home MVP. The very next year, he found himself in the MVP race once again. However, this time, he was losing, as there was another sheriff in town, Kevin Durant, who held a commanding lead, and he didn't look back as he started running away with it. LeBron's chances kept slipping further, because when the All-Star break rolled around, Durant was still at the top spot. Then it was February, and KD was still at the top spot. Until finally, LeBron took off. That month, he shot a mind-blowing 64.1% from the field, compared to Jordan's best month, which was only 58.9%. In a game against the Bobcats, he scored 31 points while only missing one shot. He averaged 29, 7, and 7 on a historic 64% shooting that month. He had just completed, hands down, the best month in basketball history, a month that even Larry Bird described as the best ever. And he wasn't even done, because on the back of this stretch, Miami had also won 12 games in a row. So whispers of another record started popping up. The untouchable record of longest win streak at 33 games. LeBron and the Heat set their eyes on the target, and were up to 18 wins now. Then they went on another run. Few games later, they won even more. It was up to 25 games now, and they were quickly closing in. They got all the way up to 27 games, until finally, they lost. During this run, the Heat had an outrageous 720-point advantage while LeBron was on the floor. The only player who had more was Kevin Durant, who was quickly getting a reputation around the league of being the greatest scorer of all time. And if it wasn't for this one lie, it would have never even happened. KD is actually well over 7 feet tall. However, he lies and says he's 6'9". And that's because during his early years, the stigma around the league was that if you're over 7 foot, they changed your game and pigeonholed you into playing like a center. But by him saying he's shorter, they let him play more like a guard, which basically meant we had a center learning guard skills, leading to the creation of a complete unicorn. He was a 7-foot sniper with a bag, completely unstoppable. And then he did something that took his game even higher. He got a haircut, and he finally got a haircut. To explain to you the significance of this, imagine how good Harden would be if he stopped eating honey buns, or if Zion gave up the addiction to BBL demons, the level of player they'd be. This is what KD had just done, and over the next few months, his game skyrocketed as he won MVP. But even as dominant as he was, he had a teammate better than him, Steph Curry. The first and only unanimous MVP in history. Also the first to average 30 while shooting 50, 40, and 90 in history. He also became the best shooter of all time when he broke the single season record for threes. Also became the only player to score 50 points and make 10 threes in a single game. And that's not even the best thing he did that year. Because he did something nobody in the entire 77 years of NBA had done. Not even Magic, Jordan, or Kobe. Become the only guard to win MVP and 65 games in a season. Out of all his milestones, that might be the one that never gets touched. Because if you think about it, the game changes a lot, causing offensive numbers to explode. So you might have someone to make more threes. But at the end of the day, the one thing that never changes is winning. It's always going to be difficult. That's why you see offensive and defensive records fall and get broken so often. But when it comes to the win records, those stay untouched. And that's the same thing with this Curry record. It might never get broken. We were literally witnessing history being made. And Westbrook was also making history. That year, he became the first player to average back-to-back triple-doubles since Oscar Robertson. He also broke his record for most triple-doubles, consecutive triple-doubles, and 50-point triple-doubles in a single season. And also, in these highlights, if you've been paying close attention, you may have noticed someone, Steven Adams. Because on all these plays, that man was out there making sure Westbrook got his numbers. And Mr. Adams, I'm going to make sure you get your props for it. On every pass from Brody, he made sure to score for the assist, even the rebounds. Yeah, could he get it? Of course. But let me just pull away a little. Let me let my boy get it instead. It takes a brotherhood to win. So shout out to you, Adams. Shout out to you, my boy. This season, Westbrook did things that people thought were impossible. Like no player had ever had a 50-point triple-double. So obviously no one thought it would happen. That season, he had 3. He also had the highest scoring triple-double with 57 points. And it should stop there. It really should. But he did something even more outrageous. That year, the Thunder averaged 108 points a game. Westbrook accounted for a whopping 52 of those points. There is nobody who comes close to that. Just a generational year. And I know that word gets thrown a lot now. I know it's overused. I know. But this season was actually it. This season was actually generational. I can't think of anything better. Maybe if someone did all of that and had Curry's record-breaking 65 win year, that might be it. That's like the only way you could top this. And believe it or not, somebody did exactly that. James Harden, during his MVP year, broke Westbrook's record of points accounted for with 56. He also broke Westbrook's 50-point triple-double record, highest scoring triple-double record. He also broke Curry's win record with 67. He was in the middle of the greatest offensive peak ever, doing stuff only Wilt Chamberlain had done. And when that name comes up, Wilt Chamberlain, that's when you know it's getting out of hand. They're the only 2 players to lead the league in scoring by 8 points. Only players to average more points than minutes per game. And then somehow, he even started breaking Wilt's numbers. Wilt's the only player to average 40 points across multiple different months. Harden did that. But for 3 straight months, he passed him for most 50-point triple-doubles. In one season, Wilt led the league in points, field goals, free throws made, and assists. Harden not only did all of that, but he also led the league in threes and wins. After finishing second place in the MVP race so many times, Harden had finally done it. He finally broke through and won his first MVP. And this taste of success only made him hungry for even more MVPs. In fact, the next year, that hunger led him to putting up his best statistical season ever. But the MVP never came. as he finished second again. And instead, it was Giannis who ended up winning. And this marked the beginning of beef between the two. In fact, on the night of Giannis' MVP ceremony, a tweet was put out by the Rockets before being quickly deleted. In that tweet, they criticized his win and listed reasons why Harden deserved it over him. Harden then doubled down when he came out and said that the award was media-driven and whoever fit their narrative would win. Also saying that he couldn't understand all the talk around this Giannis guy. It didn't make sense to him. So leading into the next season, the story around the league was a battle for MVP between Harden and Giannis. And as fate would have it, the very first game of the season happened to be between the Bucks and the Rockets. After an airball by Giannis, Harden would mock him by ducking for cover. At the end of the game though, the Bucks ended up winning, as Harden had a bad shooting night. Then the beef would escalate during the All-Star week, when Giannis took a shot at Harden by saying he wants a teammate who passes the ball. And at that time, this seemed like a lighthearted joke, nothing too serious. Until later on that week, when he continued firing shots, saying last year his team targeted Harden's poor defense during the All-Star game. And word of all this got back to Harden, who now responded with his own quote. I don't see what the joke is. He then took it further when he said that Giannis' game takes no skill and he could do what Giannis did if he was also 7 foot tall. But for him, he actually has to learn skill to play. As the season came to an end, that meant it was time again. Time to announce the MVP winner, which again belonged to Giannis Antetokounmpo. Next up on the MVP list, we have Nikola Jokic. The first time I ever seen him play, I legit had to ask myself, why is there a polar bear on my screen right now? And he was shooting nothing but green beans, just straight green beans. Let him hear about it too. I know for a fact he said something crazy in Russian right there, bro. I just know it. Look at him just laughing along, whole time Jokic just calling the N-word in Russian. And Jokic continued, as he somehow followed all that up by winning his second MVP in a row. The first time in franchise history. Talk about making a name for yourself. And this was impressive. It really was. But it had happened before. Just the years before Giannis went back to back. It was a great achievement. But we had already seen it. Now, there was something that we hadn't seen yet. Something that none of the other MVPs could even do. Win MVP 3 times in a row. And that's when Jokic did something insane. He was en route to win MVP 3 times in a row. In that third year, he was having his best season ever, putting up monstrous stat lines. He was averaging more points than Shaq's career best. Again, that's Shaq's career best, not just any random year. He also averaged more rebounds than Duncan's career best. And oh yeah, remember that first MVP we talked about, Steve Nash? Well, Jokic averaged more assists than his career best too. With only a week left in the season, he was unquestionably the favorite. Fans were already declaring the race over. Even Kendrick Perkins came out and said that if Jokic somehow didn't win, he'd retire. That's how much confidence he had, and rightfully so. Except, Jokic didn't end up winning. Instead, the MVP went to Embiid, and this sent everyone into a frenzy, sparking heated debates. People were coming out and disgracing the voters, calling them asinine, silly, and dumb. They even demanded a complete overhaul of the MVP voting system, saying it was broken. And even Kendrick Perkins came out to say something. But unfortunately, it wasn't of him retiring like he'd said. Rather, he accused the voters of being racist, saying that's why Jokic didn't win. The result had left everyone in complete shock. In that third season, he had put up better numbers. Then the 2 years, he won MVP. Make it make sense. Even compared to Embiid, he was by far the more valuable player. 76ers won 81% of their games without Embiid that season, while the Nuggets only won 45% of their games without Jokic. The tormenting and backlash raged on. In fact, it spilled into the next season, where as usual, Jokic started off hot. Right off the bat, he won Player of the Month. Then during a 3-game stretch, he became the only player in history to put up 90, 50, and 30, which he did 4 times. In fact, if you just took his stats from his first 3 quarters, he would still be better than 99% of players in history. He was averaging 24, 10, and 8, which only 3 players have ever done. But they played the entire game. Jokic got that in only 3 quarters. But by far, the best stat was that Embiid had already missed 40% of his games that season. Jokic, on the other hand, had a triple-double in 56% of games that season. No one had seen this coming. Everyone knew he was going to go crazy and had high expectations. But this was different. He was putting up the greatest statistical seasons ever. And once again, he was an MVP favorite. And because of that, 15 had the entire world watching to see if he could finally win it. Down the stretch, he led the entire league in points, rebounds, and assists. He was also on pace to become the first big man to average a triple-double for a season. And on May 8, 2024, he did something no other MVP we talked about had done. Not Kobe, LeBron, Curry. And that was winning MVP 3 different times.